Any concept of heritage status for feral horses has been firmly rejected by the ACT Environment and Heritage Minister, who's pleaded with New South Wales to bring exploding feral horse numbers in Kosciuszko National Park under control.
Horses are in Kosciuszko right on the edge of the river. They're actually trampling the edge of the river and there's no growth around it. It's quite phenomenal to see. The decimation is phenomenal. What we're concerned about is if those horses come up to the higher part of the ACT into our drinking water catchment and trample the fens and bogs that actually clean our water system. So that's our real concern.
Mick Gentleman visited the park late last year and described the destruction in the Murrumbidgee watershed as phenomenal.
But we think it's on all of our shoulders to manage feral pests and animals, particularly these large hooved animals in the waterways of New South Wales.
With the Murrumbidgee flowing through the ACT, he's asked the New South Wales Government to better control its exploding feral horse population to protect the catchment for downstream users and prevent what he says are environmental pests trotting over the border into the ACT water catchment in Namadgi National Park.
They will go where the feed is and where the environment is good to them.
The Minister has written to his New South Wales counterpart, Matt Keane, and spoken to John Barilaro, the New South Wales National Party leader, who sponsored the controversial horse heritage protection legislation through the state parliament. But in Mr Barilaro's case, at a recent closed so-called Bush Summit in Cooma, the appeal for New South Wales to control feral horse numbers on its side of the border appeared to have fallen on deaf ears.
Once again, welcome to the Monero. More importantly, welcome to the land and the country that hosts our beautiful Brumbies.
But Mick Gentleman says he's seen the decimation the horses have wreaked on the Murrumbidgee catchment streams in the park. One of the reasons ACT rangers remain vigilant in applying zero tolerance to any new horse arrivals in the ACT.
We have seen indications of stallion in the high country of ACT, but no animals at this point. So we think that the stallion has visited and then gone back to the herd. So we're still concerned. I mean, if he's come up here to have a look at the area in Namadgi National Park, then they obviously have a view to get there. They don't know any boundaries, of course. There's no border control for horses.
But the Minister said this enabled the ACT to manage the catchment effectively.
We have a very strong program with our feral horse management plan. It does mean trapping and shooting and removal of the carcass.
He warned, however, that any less vigilance in the ACT could mean an influx and build-up of thousands of horses, as has happened in the nearby Kosciuszko, forcing a resort to aerial shooting.
And we don't want to see that. So that's why we're asking New South Wales to manage this problem that they have in New South Wales before it incurs into the ACT.
Water supply and quality played a key part in the selection of Canberra as the national capital, with a reliable and pristine supply from the nearby snow-capped Brindabella ranges being one of the deciding factors. And in stark contrast to the catchment across the border in Kosciuszko, protection of the ACT under Mick Gentleman remains a continuing top priority.
And we have no feral horses in the ACT. It's incredibly important that we keep this plan active and in place because it is the source of our drinking water.
Ironically, the beneficiaries of ACT policy include Mr Barilaro himself. He's resident in nearby New South Wales, but is supplied by the ACT's Icon Water. That's prompted Mick Gentleman to urge local constituents to write to the New South Wales national leader
and say you're concerned about any contaminated water coming down into the Murray River from the Murrumbidgee River flowing through the ACT.
In the Minister's estimate, there are 15,000 feral horses at the Murrumbidgee catchment end of the park, with no evidence of any decrease since the fires, despite a recount ordered in New South Wales. So the ACT is planning to keep up the pressure on its powerful neighbour to get on with the job of managing its expanding feral horse numbers as a matter of urgency.
Water users downstream of the ACT deserve clean water. That's why we treat our catchment with so much importance.
But in Kosciuszko, the invaders impatient for the spring thaw are already seeking new growth on recently exposed ground as they move back to their old stomping grounds of the Kiandra Plain.